We are live. It's Wednesday night. Chris Noble, my partner, my co-host, alongside me, Mackenzie Wilson. We are coming live, the only talk show for Alberta landlords focusing on landlording in Alberta. We've got our special guest tonight up in the top right corner. That's Bill Biko, a good friend of mine, another powerhouse landlord who has a wealth of information, who will be our featured landlord special guest tonight answering your questions. So super stoked to have Bill come out. Thank you for your time, Bill.
I'm excited.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, so am I. I've been pretty ecstatic for this. We had a blast last week. We had the likes of Shelley Visser and Andrea Wilkinson, as well as Renee out with three lovely ladies, and that was our most popular show so far. We had at that time around 20 people watching live, and then I just checked the stats this morning. There's been 400 rewatches on that show, so it looks like we're getting a bit of traction here. People are kind of engaging and seeing what we're doing. So yeah, it's great. And we actually have a sneak announcement as well. But before I get into that, let's just kind of let's warm up the audience to who Bill is. For people who don't know Bill, I've had the pleasure of this will be our third time interacting, I guess, kind of on a live setting. No, actually, it's been more than that because we did a few live. Yeah, we did a few live sessions last year. You're on my podcast earlier this year, and then we've spoken live at a few events together. What I really like about Bill,
you took a course with me years ago.
Now you're taking my thunder here. Absolutely. So when I first got into landlording and the whole real estate investment game, I was super nervous about getting the professional tenant, and tenant screening was my big focus because I didn't know anything about it, and it was my biggest fear. So Googling the scours of the internet, I came across this tenant screening video on YouTube that Bill had done years before, and that actually has become the basis of my tenant screening process and program. So Bill's phenomenal at it. You've done over thousands of tenant screenings. I don't know how many tenants you've seen specifically, and the reason why Bill's got so much experience is he did a rooming strategy. So at his peak, he had about 55, 60 doors across a dozen properties in Calgary rented out on a weekly basis. Is that correct?
53 rooms at our peak on a weekly basis, and then a whole bunch of regular properties. So.
Absolutely. So can you imagine the tenant turnover and how much tenant screening you got really good at, and also a byproduct of that process is you got really good at the eviction process too. So we'll be picking your brain, good and bad, and you've got your systems figured out. I know you're doing things a little bit differently now. You've kind of offloaded that game and sold some of those properties, but I mean, you're a wealth of information, so I'm just thrilled to have you, and I think you're going to be a lot of great value for the folks. Chris, you're just plugging away there, which is good.
I'm just getting people, letting them know we're on, and just sending out some messages to people. So cool. You run the show, and I'll jump in where you need me because Bill's our feature here anyway. So
all right, so Bill. Okay, so I'm gonna bring you guys along for a ride here. This is something we got a surprise announcement. I thought we're gonna hold to the end, but you know what? Maybe it's just best now for the folks that have already tuned in. We got our first exclusive discount for the group. Like, just thrilled. So Chris and I have had the pleasure to work along the co-founder over at SingkeKey.com. His name is Viller. He's phenomenal. He's just been really just awesome. Just basically awesome to work with, and a complete pleasure. So we reached out to him. We said, hey, we've got this Alberta Landlord face group. We're over 1,000 members. Can we get some sort of promotional pricing? And he came right to the table and brought something more than I could even expect for. So what we've got is 20% discounting on their tenant screening services, their tenant and background credit checks. Now, what's really unique about what they've done compared to, say, Neighborly or tenant verification services or some of the other credit checking services out there that you can use is they've really simplified the onboarding process and removed a lot of the friction for tenants to go through the process. Because of doing that, they, and this is what Villers told me, according to his numbers, they have about a 90% success rate of getting people to complete their credit checking application or tenant application. So a really high success rate, which is super cool. And you get the most detailed Equifax report that they have to offer. So that's their other key differentiator. And what's really unique about that part is So for example, if you guys go do a neighborly report, you get kind of a high level summary of what that person's, their automobiles, their credit cards and mortgages, all that kind of stuff. And the report from SingkeKey.com, it actually tells you exactly what each product or service, financial product that this tenant has. So you can see if they have an RBC credit card, a WestJet credit card, a line of credit, a car loan, whatever all that information is. It tells you exactly what it is, if it's in good standing, and on top of that, it tells you what their debt servicing costs are. So why that is so critical is now when you go and look and someone says their total gross income is $2,000 or $4,000 a month, but they have $1,500 of interest fees to pay every month. Well, now you can actually double check that rent to income ratio is still within the right means, because you have that visibility to the debt servicing costs that they have to manage every month. So phenomenal, super cool product. I've been talking so much here, I didn't even share you guys the link. Here's the link you guys need to use. This will get you access to it. So really, yeah, have fun with it. It's just, I think you guys are going to be pretty thrilled. I mean, at this price point at $20, getting both a detailed Equifax credit report, plus they also do a criminal and background check, is the best price out on the market, like hands down. I know, again, I'm just going to go back to Neighborly, who I've been also using recently. Their credit or their criminal background check goes for $25 on alone. So it's a $50 service if you do both the credit and the criminal background check. So just something to compare on pricing there, which is really great. And then the second thing they've also done for us is, if you guys want a little additional protection, they have a program called Rent Guarantee, and basically it's a landlord insurance that you can get on your tenant, and if they stop paying rent or they damage your property, you get covered for those two things. And they've given us a 10% discount on those the insurance premiums if you pay it up front, which is also another big savings. So go check out the link. I'll drop it into the chat as well. And I can already see a bunch of people tuning in. Chris is in there, and Renee's in there. Hey, Renee, good evening. Awesome. Oh, perfect. Rebecca's in there with her baby. Awesome. I can definitely relate. So I'll throw that comment in there as well for you guys. So yeah, just a super cool service. And you guys got a choice as well too. You can either pay for the service yourself. When you do pay for the service yourself, you get the 20% discount, and that gets you that 9% completion rate. Because again, it's really streamlined. Or you can pass those fees on to your tenants and have them just pay for the service. If it does go towards a tenant, they do have to pay the full price. But again, it's $25 as opposed to 20. Not really a big changer. But if you put the tenant and then you ask the tenant to pay to do their application, you're going to already off the bat filter out some tire kickers as well. So I know I talked a lot. Chris, Bill, you guys got questions? Chris, what's your thoughts? I don't know. Stop me from rambling here.
No, we got our good chat. We'll talk to you guys next week. No.
Yeah. So the soft launch is tonight. Check it out. Get 20 up. I've already been using it now for a few days here. I had a bunch of viewings on the weekend. I ran 3 people through the report, and the credit report is super detailed. Yeah, so it's great. So we'll hang off there. Thanks for hanging out. Before we get into the questions, Bill, do you want to add anything to introducing you, what you're doing right now? Give you an opportunity to kind of talk here as we kind of get people warmed up.
I'm talking to people. That's what I'm doing. Spending a lot of time talking with people. I've really scaled stuff down. As you mentioned, I had all the rooming houses, sold all those off, sold the last one off a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago now. And it's given me a little more time to work on some of my other stuff. So I do some landlord coaching, and I have a lot of products and information out there. And I'm a member in a lot of groups where I try to contribute every now and then. And I seem to go in waves and jump into groups like yours and try and provide a little feedback and information for people to help them out. The one thing I wanted to touch on, well, I guess 2 things. So this week will probably be a letdown because you had such powerhouse people last week. And there's some really so I apologize in advance for that. Did really enjoy that presentation. I ended up watching it over a little bit of time. And yeah, it's just some great information inside of there. So onto the tenant screening. I mean, as you mentioned, that's kind of where we met back in the day originally.
Yeah, and 2016.
Yeah, that tenant screening is just so vital. And if we backtrack and I tell a little bit more on my backstory, with all the rooming houses, I dealt with so many tenants. I've had well over 1,500 tenants since I started. Tons of experience, tons of bad experience, tons of great experience. But the bad experience gave me quite an edge on learning how to evict tenants. And as I did more of that, people knew that I evicted a lot of tenants. So they came and asked me questions, which led to me actually creating AlbertaEviction.com, one of my websites, and creating a guide on how to use the RTDRS to evict tenants. And what I found is so many landlords don't have resources like you guys. They don't have any information on what to do for anything. You know, never mind just the eviction. So initially I thought it was just the eviction information, but you know, people didn't know how to screen tenants. People didn't know how to do maintenance on the property. People didn't know how to choose paint colors. It's so many basic pieces of information. That led me to theeducatedlandlord.com, where I have a bunch of information along that realm as well. And we're coming full circle back here where, you know, screening is probably one of the biggest things or tasks that a landlord has to really understand. You know, if you don't understand how to screen your tenants and get the right people in there, you could be in for a world of hurt over time. You know, one bad tenant typically can cost $3,000 to $4,000. You know, when you look at the money you've lost on rent, the repairs and everything else. So
yeah, absolutely.
Put that extra time into screening. Use something like SingkeKey to get the information you need, and use that as part of your big puzzle to figure out who and what you're renting your property to. I think
and you're not even talking about the stress component as well, right? I mean, that's just an uncomfortable process, to say the least. And you know what? We see it every once in a while in the Facebook. We'll have a new member join, or someone will just say, you know, I just got rid of this person. They'll take pictures of really just their you know, their rental property, their own investment for the future, just demolished by, you know, unfortunately, a very careless tenant. That just it's heartbreaking, really.
Yeah, and I think Shelley posted this on, I think it was on your group earlier today. She was talking about, you know, tenants get a little bit antsy about you asking all this information about them and doing all this screening to get the information. And I'm trusting with somebody with a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 property, and you don't want me to know anything about you? Well, if you can't provide me the information, maybe we're not a good fit for each other. And
oh, exactly. It's so true.
Isn't it funny, if you use the comparison, you can't get a $1,500 line of credit at the Brick without filling out a more detailed application.
Well, exactly.
So,
Well, it's all financial risk, right? Like whether it's a line of credit at a bank, or you know, buying a couch on credit. If you do that at the Brick or wherever it might be, they need to know you can pay your obligations. So it shouldn't really be a surprise to most tenants. And most tenants are actually, I find, are quite good about it. You know, maybe out of 10 tenants, I'll get one that'll push back or ask questions. And then usually when I talk to them, I explain exactly what you just said, Bill. You know, and as Shelley mentioned, that we all talked about, this is our investment. You know, you're getting possession of one of the most expensive things I own. So of course I need to know a little about you. They go, oh, perfect. That makes complete sense. So yeah, all right. Let's get into it. We've got a lot of people hopping on. Awesome. Oh yeah, someone says asking a quick question. We'll throw it out there. Hey, I hope this is shared to the groups later so I can watch it at the beginning later. Yeah, absolutely. It's all archived on the Facebook group. It does kind of get buried quickly because we have a lot of activity in the group. We're actually averaging between 8 and 15 new posts a day. So if you can't find it on the Facebook group, you can also go to findgreattenants.com, which is our YouTube channel, and everything is archived there as well. So I have a laundry list of questions to go through. We probably got 2, 4, 6, 8 questions queued up, and then folks, as we kind of get the creativity going here, and you've got questions coming up in your mind, throw them in the chat. Chris will grab them for us and moderate them, and then we'll give you guys our takes and kind of have that conversation and get you guys some solutions and some different perspectives on your challenges landlording right now. So I'll hop to the first one here, and it's from Alejandra, and she goes, what do you normally charge for a re-rent fee or a lease-break fee? Back when I rented, I remember it was a 1 month rent. So this is when someone breaks the lease and they want to move out early, and you have a committed on a 12-month lease, maybe they're moving out at month 8 or whenever it is, you can usually charge a break fee at the beginning. On top of that, you can usually charge any cost that you, what do you call it? Incur, thank you, is the word I'm looking for, from advertising fees and so on to put a new tenant into your property. And then the last component is while you're trying to find a new tenant, you have to be making an effort to market the unit. You can't just sit back and let the tenant still be at responsible for the incoming rent. But as you market this unit, you can also collect the rent from the tenants as well. They're still responsible. Sorry. So Bill, we've got you fresh on the spot. What's your take on lease break fees and what do you do? And you know the legal side as well. And there's two takes here. So what's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's kind of a fine line. As landlords, we tend to lose a lot of these battles when we end up going to court. So judges and hearing officers tend to find favorably for tenants when we try to not necessarily overcharge, but try to get our expenses covered. After all of us landlords are independently wealthy and we have funds rolling out of everywhere. So why shouldn't we have to cover this? So what Vanessa had actually commented on this as well. And if she sees us, hi Vanessa. It's funny all the different people I'm bumping into in this group that I know as well. When you try to push it through, you'll often get it pushed right back to you. So it depends how often or how much the tenant will fight. If you put some kind of fair amount, whether it's $200 or $500 or half a month's rent, you've probably got a much better chance that the tenant won't necessarily fight it, or if you explain it and work out with the tenants. So if we dial this back a little bit further, if you've got a tenant that's leaving and you had talked about explaining why we do some of the screening and some of this extra information, if you explain to the tenant that they could be out additional money, it could be their full security deposit because they're leaving early and you need to cover the months that they're not paying, and explain to them if they help do the showings and they help make sure the place is clean and kind of prep them to make this an easier transition, you can really cut down that vacancy period as well. So to answer the first part of the question, the re-rental fee, I wouldn't go too excessive to a full month or maybe not even half a month, depends on the rent, maybe a little bit less. And quite often the tenant will just pay it or it may come out of the security deposit. If you can coordinate with them and say, listen, if you make all these efforts to help us get it rented, we'll make sure that we cover it and get your whole security deposit back if it all works out as well as we hope. Right? You really want to work with your tenants. If you've got good tenants in place, especially, and this is something I've been talking with, I've been in a bunch of different online events in the last month and a half with COVID and everything. I mean, you spend all this time screening your tenants, putting good people into place, hopefully. You want to work with them and make sure that the relationship stays well after the fact, even after they're gone. Not that I talk to a lot of my tenants afterwards, although I do still have some that I reach out to every now and then. But you want to keep that relationship good. So you can use them as a reference later if need be at times. And bottom line, just make it something fair that works for everybody.
Oh, I have a completely different take on this. So interesting.
You're mean.
Well, okay, so I'll give you two opinions on this. I'll give you my opinion, and then I actually recently rented as well. I rented last year. We came back from BC a bit earlier. My wife and I were pregnant with our second son, and I saw tenants in my main property. So I was like, well, you know what? They're renting, they're happy. I actually went and got placed in Airdrie. I rented in Airdrie for about a year there, and it was through the strategic group, which now they got that development we rented, the townhouses we rented in, got bought out by was it First Residential Service Calgary or something like that? It doesn't matter. They're big companies. Anyway, so strategic group, very big, large player in Calgary, commercial and residential rentals that they run. They charge a whole full one month rent, a whole 1 month rent as a lease break fee. So if I was to break the lease on the second of the month, I would get charged my full rent, 1 month's rent, and then I'd still be paying the monthly rent on top of that. So I'm pretty sure, I don't know if it was you that mentioned this or someone else has gone through the RTDRS and probably the courts too. Typically these fees, if they're too excessive, they just get thrown out. But I think the value add though is how often do you actually go to court, Bill, when you charge these fees?
Rarely.
Rarely.
Where if you get to that excessive amount, and maybe 1 month isn't excessive if the tenants are very aware of it, they understand it. But if you've got those tenants that want to fight it, you probably lose that. So if you have 3 instances of a broken lease, maybe you collect on 2 out of 3.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I like the other component. It's just a big deterrent. So yeah, maybe legally it's not a leg to stand on if you have to go through and fight it. But how often are you going through and actually fighting them with these fees? Probably not very often. Like you said, maybe you'll collect on 2 out of 3. Well, then you're already net positive that much ahead. But then it's also a deterrent on paper. Like someone goes like, oh, you know what? Something happens in life. I want them to go and move out. They go and read the lease and they start, well, if I do this, I'm going to have to pay this chunk of money. And I'm like, do I want to do it? Do I don't want to do it? So there's definitely a psychological barrier there as well that helps prevent some troubles. But at any rate, whether you go up to a full month or half a month's rent or somewhere in between, it's really your choice. Again, it's a deterrent to prevent, you want the tenants to take your lease seriously because it is a contract. It's a binding contract between 2 parties. So there's got to be some penalties or some gotchas if they decide to just walk away, because if they can walk away and it's not going to affect them financially, they're going to do it more often than not and stick it to you. So, Chris, what's your thoughts?
I think you guys got it covered, to be honest with you. Not just to beat a dead horse there, but I'm, I've had to deal with the early lease breaks, and you know what? It all just depends on my, if they're just out and out walking out on me saying, that's it, we're done, then of course I'm going to compensate myself. But if we're working together and I can come up with a very, a good replacement, then by all means, I try to help my renters out. And I don't charge because it's just a quick check-in, check-out. So, yeah.
Fair enough.
Depends. You know what? It depends on the relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the relationship is so important to have the good relationships with your tenant.
Yeah. I was talking to, just a sidebar here, I was talking to another lady from another group who just joined us today up in from Grand Prairie. They run a group up there as well, and it's extremely private group, which I'm excited they added me as a member, and I love the way they're doing some things up there, and I'm gonna, we'll follow some of their lead, of course, with our group. But she talks about building relationships with tenants and how important that is to her, and she just takes a little different approach. But you know what? There's not a wrong or a right way to do things. It's what works for you, and if building those relationships works, then great. Sometimes you have to toughen up, and I go back to that phrase I often posted was, run this like a business, not a charity. Work from your heart, work from your head, not from your heart, because if you work from your heart, you are going to be a very poor landlord.
Yeah, and a broke one.
And a broke one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. I would agree. It is communication. And I mean, this goes with as in life, as in business, as in all relationship. The stronger that communication, when the bumps come up, they just get handled that much more easily. So, yeah.
Mackenzie, I wanted to jump back just a quick touch on the SingkeKey. One of the people on here, I think it's just a handle here, is Sever, S-E-V-E-R, said that they already use SingkeKey. And if some of you are doing that, keep in mind, because you are a member of this group now, and you will get a code. What are we doing? A code or something they're going to get, or an access code or something?
Yeah, it's a link. So I dropped it up. I can put it back up here 1 second.
Okay, so you're going to be getting a link. So yourself, because you're a member of this group now, and you posted your question that you already use them, you just got a discount on your services with them because you are now a member of this group. So very important that you realize the value we're trying to put into this this page and where we're going with it. We're going to be announcing some other partnerships right down the road here, from insurances to even legal components, where we have guys that are stepping up. I've talked to another guy today, and he really loved to come on board and help out. He's been doing the legal end of things. For those of you who are scared to go to court and scared against the RTD, what's that?
Back in I butcher it every time. So, but yeah, we're just bringing these value-added services and to help the group, because the really cool thing about what you guys have created and everyone that's here is our engagement rate is over 90%. It's through the roof. We've got, every time someone posts a question, I look back 2 to 3 hours later, and there's already a half dozen comments helping that person out, and I love it. That's the best part about this group, is just people helping people with these investments that are all about everyone's futures, and that's why we get into real estate investing and being a landlord is to plan for the future. And we all want to be better at the business, and it's just great to have this collective mindset that we're all helping each other. So
yeah, and just to add, finally, just that before we move on, we're also partnering with another page where that individual wants to take his page in a different direction to what he has it set up as, and he wants to help with the whole financial end of buying and selling properties. He wants to take it in that direction. So we're going to have a really neat partnership with our page and his page. So stay tuned. Get your landlord friends in here. This is going to become a great adventure for all of us, and we're excited that we are 1,300 plus members of this page, and the power of that and the knowledge behind everybody is amazing, and we're excited to have you all here.
Okay, cool. I've got another question queued up. Can I hop right into that one for you guys? So Tamara wrote a few days back there on June 14th. She says, does anyone have a hot tub in their rentals? How do you have a hot tub written up in the lease? I think we actually touched base on a similar question like this last week. Bill, I'm going to throw at you first again. How do you handle amenities on a property?
None of my rentals would have a hot tub. Not really my target market, and it's just another very expensive repair. If you're looking at a solid rental property, it's probably something I'd avoid and just simply pull out. Even some of the higher end properties, you might consider it, but you'd want to have extra insurance in place to cover yourself off. You'd need to have all kinds of waiver information in there with your lease to cover yourself from extra issues. I see a lot of landlord groups down in the US even talking about pools in their rental properties, and it's one of those areas they just want to stay away from because it's a potential lawsuit happening or all kinds of bad issues in that manner. So that's my short thoughts on it. I don't have a lot of other thoughts on that.
That's fair. What do you think?
Water is my nemesis. I don't know if it's anybody else's, but water. It's such an awful thing.
Yeah, you want to definitely water and get and penetrate into your house or the building envelope. That's where all the damage comes from. My quick thoughts on this is two things. So one, if you're doing a similar strategy to what Bill does, where he's doing renting by the room by the week, or maybe it's something like an Airbnb short-term rental, maybe not so much about Bill. Bill is targeting a very specific working demographic, so having a hot tub didn't probably make a lot of sense. But if you are doing more of a short-term Airbnb rental where you're trying to have someone come in very shortly, kind of like a hotel, it's nice to have those kind of amenities. That would make a lot of sense. But I also understand there's a lot of folks out there that have moved out of their house and they've kept and they've turned into a rental, and there's already a hot tub in place. So if you're in that position, what I would do is be very clear in the lease on how the hot tub repairs are being handled. So basically, I don't want to be repairing any hot tub repair bills because, one, they're probably pricey, they're unnecessary, they have nothing to really do that, they don't add value to the rental property, and you don't know how the tenant's actually going to treat it. So I would say it's what would be the right word for it? Is as is part of the rental. Once it breaks, it breaks. It's not a requirement to maintain the safety or the comfort of your rental. It's just a nice value add while it's there. So if it breaks, then so be it. But if you're not going to be running out there to repair because, that's how I'd have it worded. If you've put yourself into a bit of a position where it's on your lease as a provided service, well, now you're on the hook to get it repaired, and then you have to. So I think it's pretty particular on how you position that amenity in your contract.
Right.
Cool.
Mackenzie, we got questions popping up. So let's because these people are right on board, but let's go after their questions whenever they pop up, and then when we got a slow moment, we'll go back to your list. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go take a live question. So I'm seeing the first one here: pet fee or pet rent moved.
That's the one.
Yeah. Okay. What's a good charge for those? It depends on your area. I would think, like, it depends on the rental. If you got it depends. Which I know it's kind of a cop out answer, but if you've got like a high end executive rental versus an entry level home, and a starter community in Calgary to the high end, that all kind of has a variable in it. Are you out on a rural property? Like, do they have a a porch kind of area where the pet can go in, where it's not actually in the house. So a bunch of different variables, and it's also what the people are willing to pay in that area to have that luxury. And I really do consider pets a luxury. And then I'm gonna try not to ramble too long. I'll wrap this up. But pets aren't a necessity. Pets are a nice thing to have that gives people comfort, but not all folks can look after another living animal. They need to be able to show responsibility for doing that. So there was another gal that asked a question about, she's got tenant A and tenant B. I'm assuming this was a suited property up and down, or maybe it's a side-to-side duplex. Tenant A has been there for 5 years, just been phenomenal, great tenant. She gives her permission to look after the dog, no problem. It's been like that for a few years now. She has tenant B move in within 15 days. Tenant B is asking for, they want approval for a pet. And going back to where I think pets are a bit of a luxury, you also need a track record. So if this person's really serious about getting a pet and they want to look after it, tell them, you know what, if you guys want it, let's talk in 6 months and see how things go. One, they have only paid your damage deposit and 1 month's rent. You don't have a payment track record with them. You don't know how they're treating the property. You probably haven't done an inspection yet. So you at least get some of that information on your belt, and you know what type of tenant you're working with. Then make the judgment whether you should allow a pet in. Another thing you can do as well is do a pet fee. So charge 30, 40, 50 bucks a month, depending on what the market will bear in your area. And if you don't want to do the pet fee long term, well, I'd always do a pet fee. That's just my take on. But maybe what you could do is do a higher rate pet fee for the first 8 months or first year. And if she's on good behavior or he's on good behavior, and they're doing a good job looking after the pet, then maybe you discount it by 50% down to 35 or 50 bucks. So then there's an incentive, a long-term incentive for them to keep that pet and look after that pet and make sure that pet's well behaved. So there's my second take on it. So sorry, I have one more take, but Bill, how about you hop in and what's your thoughts on this?
It's really market dependent. As you pointed out, it has to do with the markets. My priority all the time is to get somebody without a tenant or without a pet, because pets just tend to cause more damage. Not intentional, but it happens, and it's just more work in the long run. So if I'm advertising, I have a choice between somebody with a pet and without a pet. If the market's really tight, vacancies are really low, that person without a pet's going to get it all the time. At the same time, if you have a property like that would accept pets and the market's tight, you use that as leverage and you charge more for it. And
it's your competitive advantage, absolutely.
You get your money up front going, it's pet friendly. Oh, you've looked at 47 places already and nobody's pet friendly? I am. Well, you're so much more, but I'm pet friendly. So
yeah, and
no
the
brainer.
People that look after their pets, they consider them family members, and rightfully so. So that's just going to appeal to them as well.
Yeah, and then the other part of that is it should be a non-refundable pet deposit at the beginning, and that again can vary. A lot of people are charging $150, $250 as a non-refundable fee. So it basically goes towards the repairs that you're going to have to do at the end, whether it's having a dog in the yard and bringing in the pooper scooper guys to clean up afterwards before the next tenant, or
landscaping, grass repair.
So
and take note, it's not if you're going to spend this money, it's when you're going to spend this money. It's going to happen. Like just pets are that much more wear and tear.
So just to spin off of what you said there, Bill, was one of the questions I know has come up on our thing is so you have damage from a pet. Can you take that from the damage deposit versus the pet deposit?
That one was actually pretty well broken down. I read through that, the comments in there as well. And that's a non-refundable pet deposit. That's just going to cover some of your costs later, your costs. That doesn't cover the damages. So that's where your security or your damage deposit comes into play. If the pet did damages, it comes out of the security deposit. Hopefully it doesn't exceed the security deposit and the pet deposit. But that they're two totally separate items, and it's non-refundable and non-applicable to the damage typically.
Right. So just for those people watching, you just summarize that, and I learned a little bit there as well, but it makes perfect sense. You have a damage deposit and the animal causes damage. That's what the damage deposit is for. The non-refundable is for cleaning your vents, your filters, maybe some of your carpets because getting the smell out. So that's where maybe that pet deposit non-refundable. Would you say that's where that would go?
Yeah, it's the wear and tear that you're going to get just by having an animal in there.
Exactly. So I just wanted to clarify that, because people are always asking, can I use a damage deposit towards a pet? The answer is yes, because the pet caused damage, they're responsible for it. Yeah. My take on it, I have had, I helped at an apartment building, and we were having trouble getting good people in. And what I kind of thought, and people were coming that had pets, and some of them I knew, and I go, you know what, these are good people. I know these people. And so I went to the owners and I said, you know what, you have to decide here. Do you want empty apartments or do you want full apartments? I said, good people also have pets, and we're missing out. And our market here in our small community of Ponoka, we're missing out on good renters who are responsible pet owners because the boundaries you've set. So you're going to have to reconsider your position of no pets. So from there we decided that we're going to go small. So basically cat size. And if it's a dog, it's going to be a dog, cat, again, the size of a cat. And make sure that they have proper things in place for the dog if it has to relieve itself because it's been there too long. And that's worked out really good for this particular apartment building that we helped out at.
Awesome.
Yeah, and the last thing I'd add on that, and Renee did a very good job of this, because this has been a discussion in the group for a little while now, is she created a pet lease. So we might, I know when we looked at some of the people talking about going through the eviction process, it might muddy the water a bit, having two different sets of paperwork. But my take on that is there's a psychology factor again, as when you put your name to pen to paper and sign on the dotted line, you're going to commit to doing these things. For the honest folks out there, and again, that's the majority of the folks, when they commit to sign another contract or lease, saying, my pet's going to be maintained, I'll make sure it doesn't bark, I'll clean up after it, all the kind of do's and don'ts of having a pet, a dog or a cat or whatever it might be. It just forces them mentally to be a little more aware of that and be more accountable, just because they've signed their name to a piece of paper. So I think we've provided lots of information there. I saw another one in the group too I wanted to talk about. Rebecca mentioned right here, water damage is one of the main claims too. And I guess, I'm sure everyone's been watching the news, or if not, down in Calgary here, we just had a massive hailstorm. What are we, Wednesday? That's Sunday night. And poor Shelly, she was on her show last week, and now she's dealing with a bunch of massive insurance claims. And actually, I have the exact same insurance policy she does, same broker and everything. I just checked my policy, and I have a $5,000 deductible for hail damage per property, and that is a huge hole or threat in my financial plan I was not aware of. So I'm actually absolutely making some adjustments to cover that, to mitigate that risk, because taking a 15 grand hit as opposed to maybe 3 or 4 grand is significantly different. It's still somewhat manageable, but man, it would put me in a spot further down the road that I'm not comfortable with. So I do appreciate Shelly sharing that information, because that's something else I'm looking at. So I thought that'd be worth noting in this season of hail right now that we're having.
There's another question there, Mackenzie, that came up from Tamara Gearing.
Hey, I don't have the full view again. It's only comes to Facebook user. Is it? Can you write off? Can you write?
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay, cool. We'll throw this one up here next. Okay, can you write that in a lease for them to take care of it like an appliance? Can you make so they have to fix if it breaks? Yeah, you know what? You can. I think if it's, as long as it seems it's fairly written, saying, hey, this is use as is. And I'm just going back to the hot tub question here. You can absolutely put something in there saying these amenities in the house, this hot tub, this, I don't know, gazebo, if that even makes sense. Or, a sauna, for example, if you've got one of those wooden portable saunas that you set up in a room, those are nice to have features that, it's was given to you in working condition, and that's key. You capture that in your move-in inspection. If you have that as a clause in your lease saying that if these things break beyond normal wear and tear, absolutely, it would be the tenant's responsibility to fix. I think some of the gray areas where if they own a hot tub, I've never owned a hot tub, so I'm just going here. I don't know how the cost and the maintenance goes, but if it's not black and white and who caused the damage, you're likely going to be on the hook for it. And then you will definitely be on the hook for it if it's a service that you're providing or amenity that you're providing is in your lease, in your contract. Again, you'll have to fix it. So yeah, the wording's super particular or super important on that kind of thing. So
I think the danger part there is, can you make it so they have to fix it if it breaks? And we're back to, what's normal wear and tear, and when you're dealing with something like a hot tub.
How do you define that?
Yeah, when does a pump break? When does a jet not function as well as it should? Was it because beer bottles were dropped into it, or was it just normal wear and tear? And how do you determine that?
Yeah.
Was it properly shut down for the winter so that it didn't freeze up? It's just avoid it if you can, because it's a lot of extra work.
Yeah. The only way I can think of this too is if you have a service provider in the area that does hot tub maintenance and they provide you some sort of ongoing maintenance plan for a monthly fee or something like that, and then you pass that cost on to the tenant or find some way to share, then you've got a trusted third party maintaining the hot tub for you, and you're taking a lot of that, exactly what Bill said. If proper maintenance, they'll come out and do the winterizing the hot tub, or doing the chemical changes, or check the pumps, or whatever the particulars are of that amenity that you're providing the maintenance. So okay, anything else? Anything on top of mind? I gotta get myself, I have to read a question, so you've got 5 seconds to fill the air here as I get ready for the next question.
You're doing great. How's that?
Perfect. Great. Awesome. Okay, so Kevin wrote this question. Here's our next question. I got a question about naming bad tenants in this group. I understand why we all want to know about who they are. I rent out 5 homes too, and I've had some bad ones. However, I'm concerned about blowback, i.e. human rights, privacy, and so on. This was a great conversation. Chris, you were pretty active on this, and we actually had a girl, a lovely lady girl, comment saying that she was a privacy, a certified privacy professional. Sorry, I'm totally butchering the acronyms here, but this just goes back to, and this is a really good talking point in the group of how we're doing our undesirable tenant list, and it's really a peer-to-peer landlord reference on existing or well-known tenants that you likely don't want to rent to. So Chris, going off the top of your head, do you remember the information she shared, or do you want me to dive into it for you?
Okay, so here's our general take on this right now. The information that you're sharing on here is on you. If you post something, it's on you. Now, one of the things that you do not post is the private information. For example, a driver's license. And I do believe that got posted on our page here at one point, and we got that taken down.
Yeah.
We can only control so much of what goes on here, and as soon as we see it or we're notified, we'll get it off. But if you have a renter that goes sideways and the information that you have is factual, and that if you had to go to court and you had to testify, it's fine as long as you're posting the truth. If you embellish your truth, you know what? You're going to own it, and you're going to find yourself in trouble, and someone will get a hold of it. But for example, I'm helping a lady who someone hasn't paid 3 months worth of rent, and I already know that the place is going to be left looking like a shit show. So you know what? It's the fact. We have the documented fact. Hasn't paid. The place is a mess. Here are the pictures. This is who it is. You don't. This is a private group. Now we've had Rob Bowen, who is on this page. He did some research and spoke directly with a lawyer, and lawyer said the same thing. Wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole because as long as it's truthful. And the lady you're referring to, I'll have to go back and get her name, but she's just
Roxanne.
Roxanne, there you go. A brand new member to us, and she has the background in this, and she's saying do not post their personal information. However, you can deal with facts. What's the difference of me putting on here? Anybody know about Bob Blow, Jim Blow here, and does he what's he like? Well, someone says, well, I'll message you personally, or no, don't rent to him because this is what happened to me.
Both fair responses. Yeah, it comes back to you can speaking the truth. I'm not going to get you in trouble. Like that's hands down. So don't be afraid to share. You know, if you've had a very unfortunate experience with the tenant, don't be afraid to share because you're helping somebody else, and it's it's good karma to help prevent someone else to save their investment, especially if it's a really bad experience. I mean, that's huge. And then the best way she did a really good job of putting it, and what she wrote is, we use a guideline of, if it's in the phone book, it's okay. Careful of inflammatory statements, just provide facts and documented by evidence. I mean, and everyone, I think what we've seen so far in the group, everyone's really good at that. They'll go through and do pictures and like here's literally the mess they did, and talk about details and stuff. And they just said, don't rent to them and everything else. But yeah, it's just, if it's already public information, like the first and last name, and they have a picture on Facebook, that's free game. They've put that information out there. You can definitely share that. And then again, you're speaking the truth. You're going to be okay. Yeah, I know.
Bill, what's your thoughts on that?
You're politely just sitting there, and you're like, okay.
It can be a fine line, and as you mentioned, inflammatory comments can push that over the edge. So it has to be factual. If you've actually got a judgment, if you're taking to somebody through the RTDRS, for instance, and you have a judgment against them, that's public record. People can do searches and find that out, and they can't come after you for that. One of the other questions we're going to touch on a little bit later, maybe next, is where we're talking about the rental management companies not providing much information.
Yeah, I like that one. Yes.
And
let's go to that next one. So continue your story. And
let's just jump right. Yeah, go ahead with it. And then I'll
bring it up. Okay, yeah. Sure. Okay. Oh, yeah, it goes. So Elmar wrote, does anyone know if rental management companies can give a reference on a previous tenant? I'm curious because they would go through this so many a year that they might not want to look them up. I have an applicant that was with SingkeKey for 11 years, so that would be great to hear from them. Bill, what's your take?
They're treading a fine line too, because they can't give out too much information or it's deemed privacy invasion and they're sharing tenant information. So they tend to be pretty tight with a lot of the information, especially the bigger management companies. I don't think they want to be bothered, which is really unfair because they are a valuable resource for this kind of information. It's too much work for them. And B, they're scared of all the privacy concerns because the privacy police could clamp down on them for who knows what. And if you're following all the rules where you're supposed to have locked cabinets with your tenant information and all of this extra stuff, a lot of landlords don't do it. They've got their stuff in folders and maybe an unlocked file cabinet, and they're breaking the law. Doesn't make them bad people in these situations, but there's specific privacy rules. So you can't necessarily always get all the information out of somebody, and you can't definitely, again, embellish what's going on. Were they a bad tenant? Oh, they were horrible. They were the worst people I've ever known in my life. Mm-hmm. Even embellished it. It's like, were they a good tenant? Well, I wouldn't rent to them again. Where do you draw that line?
Yeah, my take on this, I'm absolutely thrilled if I get I get my application and I see either the current or the previous tenant is a company. For one thing, they all keep good records, because if they can't track who's a bad tenant, they're not going to be making money. So they're on top of this stuff. I guarantee you they all have notes, especially if there's damages, if their rent was paid on time, when they rent to them again, how were they to deal with, was there noise complaints? All that information is for sure documented. And most times I've had no problem getting a reference. Typically, almost all of them will ask for written approval. Great. All my applications have a clause saying if you sign here, you've given me the permission to go do a background check on you. And I just send that over an email, and then same day I'll email them back, or I'll get an email and I'll put all my questions in there, like my top 3 or 5 questions. They'll just fill them all out and I'll get back to you. Or I go back and call them an hour later and I talk to because it depends how big the company, they might have someone specific for leasing in this one building or complex. I talk to the person and they're like, okay, yeah. And then they say, would you rent to this person again? Was there any damages? Was rent paid on time? Did you have any complaints? And you get those 4 or 5 questions answered, and right away. And they don't bullshit. They're just like, I've done it probably 6 times now, all different companies, out in Saskatoon to here in Calgary and up in Edmonton, and I've never had a company not give me information. You just got to get your written approval and send it over. That covers their that covers their liability when they discuss this information with you, and then they're usually an open book saying good or bad on that tenant check for you.
Cool. One of the questions Rebecca brought up here, it said here, what's the link to see the judgments with the RTDRS? Is it the CanLee site? I don't think CanLee has that, does it, Bill?
It's not a link. You'd have to get a search done at the courthouse to get
that's right. CanLee is a search for case laws. If you're looking for case laws that support whatever reason you're going to court. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but that's where you would search for some supporting court decision where you need to go to. I just want to put a little thought in here, because we're talking about tenants that are undesirable. That's a term I like to use, is about as user-friendly as it gets, is we are working with a couple of gentlemen that run a particular program where you can report appropriately good and bad tenants. And we're trying to have some really good discussions with them and how to bring that to you as well. So just another plug in here for you guys as part of the program. We are working towards that issue, and that'll resolve all of our concerns of what's posted on this page, because being a part of this program is fantastic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That one is great. I'm actually really excited to get that one going. So we're in talks there, and long story short, what they do is they allow you to report the monthly payments a tenant makes on their rent, positive or negative, to the credit bureau. So if they're doing a good job, you'll build their credit up. If they're doing a bad job, you'll hurt their credit. So it's a really good double-edged sword that benefits the honest people, and it mitigates the people with ill intent. So yeah, stay tuned for that. We're hoping that we'll bring that out as soon as we've got something more firm for you guys. Rebecca, I've got actually another question from Rebecca here, so I might as well dive into this one. This one's gonna be great for both of you guys because this is all eviction related. So she goes, 14-day evictions, technically 16 days since the serving day and the move-out day do not count as days. Looking for some clarifications. I've created an account online and started the form. So once I submit the application, do I print out everything and serve on Tenant? Okay, so she's got a few questions here. So let's go with the first question. So she's doing this eviction, and this and you actually, Bill, you're commenting on this post as well. So there's two processes here, right? There's RTDRS, and then there's the courts. So where's this 14-day notice? Where does that pertain to?
Actually, three things here. I think Rebecca kind of combined several things going on here. Courts and the RTDRS can kind of be interchangeable at points, especially when you're talking evictions. There are different processes, but it's basically the same type of thing. The 14-day eviction notice, I think everybody needs to be aware the 14-day eviction notice is really worthless. You know, it's just a piece of paper. Tenants don't have to leave when you give them a 14-day eviction notice. And as she pointed out, there's 2 days on the front and the back end, the day you serve it and the day they're supposed to be out. But just because you've given a tenant a notice doesn't mean they have to leave at the end of that eviction period. Until they have a court-ordered or an RTDRS ordered eviction date, they can refuse to leave. And you know, right now we're going through some trying times because we had the RTDRS closed for a while. My neighbor just started up his car. Good times if you can hear that in the background.
Hey, a little bit.
yeah. So 20-year-old kid with a new muffler. Anyway. So with the timelines to get people evicted, I quite often recommend to people just to bypass the 14-day eviction notice. You know, if they're bad tenants and it's a serious issue, just immediately go apply at the RTDRS or apply at the courts, whichever is your preferred method. Right now it's the RTDRS. If you don't have enough evidence, then I would suggest go with the 14-day eviction notice. If it's for something like non-payment of rent, the eviction notices are null and void as soon as you give or you receive payment on that. So if the tenant pays you, the eviction notice is null and void. So there's just a lot of caveats with an eviction notice. But they make great evidence. They can show a late payment history. They can show a history of problems. And if that's what you need to gather up to create a successful eviction, then it might be worthwhile hanging on to get that done.
So to ask you further what you're saying about the I get where you're saying about the eviction notice being worthless, and if they pay you. I think if they're not paying you, if you add in a second reason for the eviction, that being that continuously late payments, that's still another reason. So you can't, that'll allow you to be able to accept that late payment, but still continue with the eviction, will it not?
Yeah, there's specific terminology, and a lot of people aren't aware of that as well, which you just pointed out. If you're evicting them for non-payment of rent, all they have to do is pay it, and the eviction notice is null and void. And again, they don't have to leave anyway. It would have to go to the courts where you'd have to apply for that and go, this is the reason. If you're evicting somebody for continuous breach of the payment terms of the lease, now it's entirely different. So if they're continually paying late, and you have proof of it, and maybe that takes an eviction notice or two where they pay late, or just a very good documented string where you're showing that they're paying late and you've said this isn't proper procedure. Now you can evict on continuous, a breach of the payment term, basically. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. It's basically you're flock shooting. You're taking a shotgun instead of a shotgun approach to it. So if they fix one part, you still got something else to fall back on. So
yeah, and I recommend if somebody's evicting a tenant, you evict for everything that you possibly can. If they're smoking in the property, if they're not paying, and it's a non-smoking property, and they're not maintaining the property, and
partying, noise, pets.
You throw it all in there. I'm evicting for this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason. Oh, this one got thrown out? Well, the other 5 aren't going to be. So
that's brilliant. I didn't even think of that. You know why that's so good? Well, you're covering your backside, because if you just go on very narrowly focused and then like it gets thrown out, you're now restarting the whole process again. And that could be more months of damages and misrents or whatever your problem that you're dealing with is. So if you get all your documentation done up front, throw it in there, and then you lose 2 out of the 5, you still got 3 legs to stand on, and you still get your eviction process or your document, or what do you call it? The server, the court order.
Yeah.
Court order.
Yeah. Yep. And then just to clarify for some people, they don't understand. They say it's a 14-day eviction notice. You still have to have 14 clear days. And what clear days means? The day you serve it doesn't count, and the day they're moving out doesn't count. You have to have 14 clear days in between, and that's when an eviction notice. That's what 14 clear days means. So it's 16 days.
Right. Okay. I'm just going through what else she wrote here. Okay. So once I submit the application, do I print out everything and serve it on the tenant? So what does she mean by that? Do you know what she's trying to go with there?
If she's talking about,
I think she's talking about the RTDRS process. And Rebecca, if you haven't gone through it, I understand your frustrations in trying to figure it out. But if you go through it, they tell you exactly what you need to be doing. So the answer is, as soon as you're given a date, then the RTDRS sends back and say, yeah, now you must serve them. Here's your hearing date, but you have to have them served within a certain amount of time. Is that what you get, Bill, or is that?
It was kind of confusing, but yes. So, you make the application, and that's not necessarily the part you serve by itself. You have to get the information back from the courthouse as to the RTDRS as to the hearing date, and then you have the full application that you have to serve onto the tenant. So,
right.
In the old days, when you did it in person, you took your big swack of papers and you had to have multiple copies of it down there, and they stamped everything and approved it. And then you had to take one of those big swacks of paper and give it to the tenant so they knew exactly what you were evicting them for and when the hearing date was. And then that way they could prepare their defense, because the tenants are just sitting at home going, gee, I should prepare all this information for a really solid defense because A, I'm not paying and I'm partying and I'm breaking the property. So they don't do that. They look at the paperwork and typically throw it away and don't even show up for the hearings. But the rules say they have to have all that evidence that you have against them and what you're showing. So it's a similar process with the online format, but they've just modified some of the steps. You have to email all your stuff in and then print some of that off to give off, along with the extra information they give you about the hearing dates.
Yeah. I just did one, and I sent everything in, and I had my court date the next day. and the court date just happened to be 2 weeks down the road. I'd already served my 14-day eviction notice, and on the 26th, so that was the 19th, they have to be out, which is Friday, so we'll see. I have seen a truck and trailer back up there, so fingers crossed. but the 26th will be the hearing. Now, so if they leave, here's the question. If they leave, do you have to still do the hearing? Well, double-sided issue there is, well, no, you don't have to do the hearing, but I'm going to tell you, you're crazy not to do the hearing. Because at that point, if you're just asking for them to leave, well, they left. But you should be going in and asking for unpaid rent. You should be asking for whatever damages, whatever other things were on there. You're going to get a judgment against them. Yeah. And if they don't show, it's held ex parte, which means they hold it without them. Boom, you got your judgment. It's about a 5-minute process, and then you go down to the courthouse, and now you have your judgment, and you can start your garnishee and seizure processes of any assets you can find for them. So the answer is yes, you continue with the hearing, because hopefully you've asked for more monies, and you got now your judgment against them.
Yeah, so that's really going to come down to what's outstanding. If it's 2 or 3 months of rent, yeah, you want that judgment like crazy. If they're just simply bad people, you want that judgment just to make their life a little bit tougher and then have it show up on their credit history. Yeah. If we're dealing with 1 month and the security deposit is going to cover it, and you think you can deal with it and it's not going to be much of an issue, then you may or may not want to do the hearing.
That's right.
For the most part, I'd still recommend doing it just to get that judgment.
The courts report anything over $1,000 does get reported to the credit bureau by the courts.
Yeah.
So, cool. Got some questions popping up there, Mackenzie.
Yeah. Likely being Calgary. Okay, I see Tamara asking her questions. Before we jump into Tamara's questions, I wanted to throw this one up because this is a question I actually remember asking you, Bill, when I did our training like 4 years ago. So Miriam writes, I'm interested to know how you would word it when you let a potential applicant know you're not going to go with them after they filled out the application, whether it's because they're not on the rental. Yeah, for basically, how do you reject an applicant, someone who's applied to your property that you don't want to rent to them?
We've decided to rent to somebody else.
Correct.
I may not know who they are yet, but it's not you. But you don't say that. Don't say that part.
No, yeah, keep it short and sweet, and just wish them best of luck and say, yeah, I've decided to rent to somebody else. And then here's a common objection: what happens if your rental ad's still up for a week later or 10 days later, and they come back and say, hey, you're still advertising for a rental, and you told me no? What would you say then, Bill?
They fell through. So we've decided that since we're not going to get it rented right away, we're going to take more applicants, and we still have your information. If you get the place, we'll give you a call.
Perfect. Love it. Yeah, and the group on this posting actually had a lot of very similar, quick, clean, pass on them, don't go into details, just say no thanks, but we've decided to go with somebody else. It's really what it comes down to. So my only take I'd add on this is if someone takes the time to fill an application, they usually take 15 minutes or however long it takes for someone to collect all the information. I at least gotta let them know. I think it's just a common courtesy. You can do it whether it's via text, email, or phone call. I'm not sure, whatever communication process you're using with the tenants. Just let them know, because if they know that they're not being chosen, they might have another property and they can go back and talk to the other landlord. But if they're holding out for your property because you have a nicer property, people need to know. So I think that's my only add on to that is just make sure if they've taken the time to fill an application, let them know. Either way, yes or no, good or bad, then they can move on. And it's just a good courtesy. And I've had tenants actually thank me for, I didn't select them, but like, you know what, you're one of the few landlords that actually got back to me and let me know, and that made it a lot easier for finding my property. It's like, oh, well, good on you. So,
do you want us to jump to another question on the list here, Mackenzie?
Yep.
Bill, I know you can go right after this one, so I'm just going to read them while Mackenzie. This from Tamara says, I'm going to put both questions together here. Is there a high risk to having an illegal suite? That's a hot one. And for income properties, would you say it's better to have a suite in a house, or would it be better to have a multiplex? Over to you, Bill.
Illegal suites.
So caveat, using Calgary. So this is all it depends on the municipality, but I'll let you continue on that one, Bill.
So the Calgary answer for that was entirely different 3 months ago. there's a new answer for it now. So what we're kind of hearing in the background is, here's a 3 month ago answer. 3 months ago, the city was offering to waive the fees for the applications and a bunch of the conversions for illegal suites. The rumor was in the back end, once that free waiving period was over, within the next 3 to 4 months, they were going to start actively searching for the illegal suites. It's not something that had actually been done in Calgary before. You only ever had to deal with illegal suites if you got reported. So if you had a bad tenant and they reported you, that's how they found out, or if the neighbors complained. They wouldn't actually go out to look. The thoughts that we're hearing were after June. It was the beginning of June that the waiver period was over. 2 to 3 months down the road, they were going to start actively going after, bylaw was going to start actively going after the Kijiji ads and the Rent Faster ads that didn't have the permit number showing they were approved. Was it as part of a revenue stream? Probably at this point in life. What's happened recently, the city has, in a very good manner, decided that because they couldn't get inspectors out to do all the pre-inspections and do everything to do all these waivers due to COVID, they pushed it back for another 1.5 years. So all these fees are being waived. So 3 months ago, I would have said, stay as far away from an illegal suite as you possibly can right now, because they're going to get shut down. A lot of them are going to get shut down. It's going to be a real headache, and it's going to cost you a lot of money. At this point, because they're extending things, they might not be a bad opportunity, because there's probably going to be a lot of landlords getting out of the business, especially with illegal suites, and it could be an opportunity to do a conversion. And I know a lot of people are having a huge amount of success with conversions of the illegal suites to legal right now.
So Bill, are you saying that go ahead and pick up a place with an illegal suite, and then you've got sort of a grace time to bring it up to a legal standard, or just run with it as illegal? What are you saying?
I would do the conversion. I would not keep it illegal for very long and start getting on the process of getting it converted. There's so many liabilities that you're running into with illegal units. We've seen the ones where the windows are too small and people haven't been able to get out, and there's been deaths, and that's not something you want on your conscience going forward. I mean, you want to create a nice, safe environment for your tenants. So make sure they're legal, make sure they work. And when I started out, I had a bunch of illegal properties. But that's what I knew at the time, and as I evolved and learned more, it just kind of modified along the way. And it's like my eyes kind of got opened up as we went along. Not that my properties weren't safe, but they weren't necessarily zoned for it at the time or set up properly originally.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I can add on that too. So I could definitely speak to the Calgary market. So I know I've got a lot of friends and folks that invest up in Edmonton, for sure, because Edmonton is well more advanced than Calgary in terms of their secondary suite bylaws, and they've progressed quite a bit further. I would peg them 5 years in front of us, give or take. They are actively doing that right now. Well, what Bill said, they'll search on different rental ad sites and shut you down if you don't comply. It's full blown. You have to be legal. And look at this from an investment perspective. I have the house I'm currently in right now. I've got it legalized. I got it done right at Christmas 6 months ago. I've got 2 more on the go that I'm getting legalized. There's a huge risk to your income, because can you still manage that rental and do that investment if you lost half your income or 40% of that rental income on that property? So for my market, I'm in a 1,100 square foot bungalow, 3 bedrooms, 1 bath up, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath down. We rent the upstairs for around 1,400, give or take 1,500. Downstairs, I've gotten as high as 1,200. I had some pet fees and other stuff associated in there, but it definitely rents for a solid 1,000 to 1,100 bucks a month, because it's legal, or even before it was legal, but it is now. So if you're getting 1,000 bucks just for argument's sake, and you get shut down, you went from bringing in 2,500 down to 1,500. Can you still float all your costs? Like, that's a huge financial that's a huge financial risk that I can't do, because I've set my properties up to cash flow, let's say 500 bucks. So I can't lose $1,000 income off of that property or revenue stream. The second take on that is there's definitely a great buying opportunity from the investment side right now in Calgary. You can buy, and I believe it's March, if you have proof of the suite was in existence prior to March 2017, you qualify for this grace period that Bill is talking about with the city of Calgary. And if you buy right, and I can go on for long here, so I probably won't. We're 10 past, but there's like, you know, the right window sizing where the electrical panel is located. There's a bunch of must-haves. The lot requirements meet the right size. Is there enough parking on site? You got to meet all these basic things. If you meet these things and you know what you're looking for, you can buy a property and maybe only have to spend a couple $1,000 to get it legalized, depending on what needs to be done. And then you've got that guaranteed income now. You can't get shut down by the city because you've met the safety standards, and it is really just the right way to go. So.
Yeah. So there you go, Tim. There you go, Tamara. That answers your question, and that's a really good thing. Go find out what the bylaws are. Find out what it takes to make it legal, and go
Red Deer,
shop.
Lethbridge.
Go shop. Go shop around for a property that is 75% there for you versus trying to take one from a 20% there to 100% there. It's just becomes a money thing. So that makes sense.
Yeah. My take on it is depending on how much cash flow you have and you're going to do it. If you can do it, I would prefer to take an undeveloped basin and bring it up the code. Well, you know, there's two ways to take on this. You do it that way, then you know how it's built, then there's no issues because you're seeing it done from scratch. If you're going the latter with a pre-existing and you're conformant to make it into a legal suite, there's a lot more cost savings if you bought right. And you got to make sure there's a lot of, there's a checklist you need to go through. You need to have in place that you won't get caught. Like if you, for example, I was looking at one property, it had false ceilings, and if you had to go and board and drywall a whole roof in the basement at 1,000 square feet, you're looking at like, oh man, $1,000 supplies, materials, and another 1,500 in labor. It's about $2,000 give or take. I'm guessing here. I mean, it really depends on what's available plus the price of cost, but it's a big chunk of money that you got to anticipate for. So, yeah. Cool. Okay, we talked about the pet fees. Is there any other questions or anything top of mind right now? Well, we got you.
One of the questions you have there is it easy to convert, or is there a ton of loopholes and hoops you have to jump through? And you kind of explain that. It's gotten way better than it used to be. 10 years ago, you'd go apply, and if you got turned down, you basically had to shut down your suite so people wouldn't bother. They've made that whole process, again, Calgary-based, they've made that whole process a lot easier and less hoopy to jump through, making it a better process.
Yeah. I'll quickly riff on that. So there's two standards there, and I always get these mixed up. So forgive me if I quote it backwards. But there's the fire code, and there's the building code, and one's more stringent than the other. I forget which is which. Right now, because of this grace period with the city of Calgary, they're allowing you to conform to the less restrictive standards. So basically, they just want all the safety stuff in place. They want proper size windows, proper exits, hardwired smoke alarms that can be interconnected wirelessly, but hardwired for power. So if one trips, both the main floor and the basement, all the alarms go off. And that's and then between the main floor and downstairs, there has to be a fire barrier. So that would be drywalling and mud and taped all around. Or if you're in a utilities room, which they're super awkward shape, and you've got vents and conduit, and you can't really drywall it easily, you can do a fire sprinkler. So like you see in the gyms and at schools and in office buildings, if they detect they have a very sensitive little glass ball, they click off, and then they spray water. And that's an alternative to just drywalling in a utility room, which that's what I went with because it's a lot easier to do. So you get all these safety things in place. You get up to a legal standard, but you don't have to do the higher standard. If you have to go down the higher standard, i.e. you're building a basement suite from scratch, you have to have two separate heat sources. So that's two furnaces, two sets of ductwork, or you're doing baseboard heating, and there's just a bunch of additional costs that right now the golden opportunity is you don't have to pay that. So it's a great investment time right now with this grace period. So sorry, lots of rambling there. We're 10 past, quarter past. Do we have any other questions people want to, Bill, you guys want to touch on? I think we got most of the questions answered. Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bill. I'll just touch on Rebecca's questions here. If you guys had any vandalism to your properties after evicting someone, my renters have a couple teenagers and a little worried about them. It's like anything. It's not much you can do. If they're going to wreck the place, they're going to wreck it. So I would say, yeah, people have had that problem. They say, you know, they're going to throw their party and do a house wrecking. So make sure you've taken your applications. You have the information you need. So when you do have to go after them, you can go after them. There's not much you can do.
Yeah, this brings back full circle to it's so important to get the right people in place. You know, even if you do have things can go sideways, but you spend all that extra time screening at the beginning, and it reduces a lot of the problems of vandalism and non-payment and other issues. So, you know, really make sure you screen your tenants well.
Yeah. And that takes us back to what we're trying to do for you folks here. We're trying to work for our tenant credit bureau situation. We've got the screening process. We're trying everything. We're getting this out there. Use the services that we're connecting with for you, and we'll get you some good renters. Well, you'll get it because you're going to use the services. There's our little
process.
There's our little plug for what we're trying to do for you.
Yeah. Bill, thank you so much for your time. We're quarter past the hour, so you stayed on a little bit of overtime. Our after hours are discussion here. What are you working on right now? So I want to give you an opportunity to plug what you're doing, what you're working on. Do you have a passion project, a business venture, a charity? What's important to you right now?
Well, like I said before, I'm popping up in a lot of these groups, trying to help landlords all over the place, giving them answers and stuff. I have my sites where I provide a bunch of free information and some paid information, of course. Educatedlandlord.com, theeducatedlandlord.com, and albertaeviction.com. And my wife and I help out a local charity, Cornerstone Youth. It's a group up in Northeast Calgary where they help out a lot of underprivileged kids, kind of a place for them to go after school, get meals in the morning before school and stuff. So if you looking for a place to donate time and or money or supplies, Cornerstone Youth here in Calgary is a great place to look at. So
cool. Well, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, we're, another good night, lots of fun. Bill, you were more or less on the spot the entire night because we had another gentleman lined up. He had to back out. He had a commitment he had to go and do. I might have had a last minute gal, but she got busy as well. So, yeah, thank you for being on the spot with us.
Well, thank you very much for having me out. I mean, you guys are doing some great stuff, and I'm enjoying reading a lot of the questions that show up and trying to help a little bit with some answers and some input. And I'm excited to see where you go. And I think I know the guy you were talking to about the tenant information.
We're pretty sure you do. We'll have an after show chat. We'll have an after show chat.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So listen, thank you very much, Bill. We're going to have you back on again down the road if you'll bless us with your presence again.
Oh, would love to be back. I love doing things like this.
Great,
cool.
Great. So
awesome. All right, and that's that. We'll wrap it up for you folks. It's 2018. Thank you, Chris. As always, partner in crime here, and we'll see you guys next Wednesday. Please keep asking questions. It's been a lot of fun watching people learn and share the knowledge. So
remember, people, rent with your head, not with your heart. It's your business. Do it that way.
It's your livelihood.
It's your livelihood. Take care.
Take care.
Night, everybody.
Good night.